Okay, so Lily, can you explain, please, why is this an issue? Why do hotels need to know about it?
So, first of all, I wanted to see how many people in the room had heard of strong customer authentication, or the European Payment Services Directive. Quite a few. So this is well, it's not even a new piece of legislation anymore. It was kind of started in 2016 and was written into law across the EU in early 2018. And it's all to do with increasing innovation in financial services and that kind of thing. But on the other side of that, there's also a strong focus on increasing customer security and reducing fraud. And as part of that, there's going to be strong customer authentication mandated, which I think we have a slide here, essentially means, that 2 types of authentication will be required to process an electronic transaction. So
when you want to buy something
online or contactless, you need 2 types of authentication. So I think we're all familiar, probably we've all logged into maybe a Google account or an account where, as well as your email address, you might also need to get a text to your phone to log in. So if you think about that process, that's going to be mandated across electronic payments.
So equally for me, some of my credit cards, when I make an online payment, they'll push me to a special HSBC page, and I have to know a second load of information about me.
Yeah, so that's the 3D secure process, yeah. So the new 2 factors will need to be 2 from any of these 3 categories. So possession, which might be your phone or your credit card. Knowledge, which would be a password or your PIN code. And then the third one, which is probably where we're going to see the most kind of new processes, is inherence, which is something you are. So say Face ID, Touch ID, biometrics, that kind of thing. So if you think about Apple Pay, paying on your phone, possession is your phone, that's something you have, and inherence is your thumbprint or your facial recognition. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm buying something on my phone, it can still be relatively friction-free because I'm pay on my phone and it's got my password already in there, my credit card already in there, press go, and then it'll just ask for Face ID maybe.
Yeah, but it'll all depend on the readiness of the merchant to take that,
Okay, so when do merchants have to be ready?
September 14th is the compliance deadline, and I think different countries around the European Union are looking at kind of extensions and that kind of thing, but there's no guarantee yet that anything will be extended, so September is the kind of the hard deadline at the moment.
Okay, so if you want to accept a payment from someone online, from September in Europe, you need to have 2-factor authentication.
Yeah, so it's estimated that at the moment it's about 2% of these transactions, this is UK only, these figures, require this level of authentication, and then come September it'll be about 40%, because there are exemptions and that kind of thing as well, but that's a huge leap,
Okay, so we're going from 2% of transactions having this to 40%. What are the exemptions? Might hotels be exempt?
So there's a bunch of exemptions, including things like mail order, telephone order. There's some low-value exemptions, so it'll all depend on the fraud rates of the issuing and acquiring banks. So it all gets a bit technical, so not something to 100% rely on. But also in the hotel industry, obviously, order values are high, typically. So it's not one that's likely to apply so much. And other exemptions include corporate cards and things like that as well.
Okay, so the obvious risk is from September, anyone booking your hotel who used to be able to just put in a credit card number will then have an extra level of friction. And any extra level of friction in a purchase is going to likely reduce conversion rate.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about the direct site, I think that will be a lot of people's initial concern. We do so much to take steps out of that process, and now we're adding something in. And I think as well, when kind of 3D Secure first came around with that verified by Visa or something window, there was a lot of friction and pain around that. So the major card schemes, Visa and MasterCard, have actually been developing 3D Secure 2, which is set up to take this 2-factor and biometric and everything. So that seems like a really good place to start kind of on your booking engine. But obviously, in the hotel industry, we don't just sell hotels on the hotel site, as we've been talking about for 2 days. And that's, I think, where some complexity comes in. Okay,
just before we get into that, next bit of complexity, why do we have to do this?
Well, so the regulation is all about decreasing fraud, essentially, and increasing security. So if you look at fraud rates across the European Union, so chip and PIN came in 15 years ago, and since then, kind of customer present transactions, the fraud has grown, but not at the same kind of exponential rate as customer not present transactions, which is online, essentially.
Okay.
So this is all about really strongly authenticating that the person using that card is the card holder. So this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of implementing whatever steps you have to take to be ready for this. The short-term disruption, and it may in the short term disrupt conversion rates, especially for people who are used to a certain way of booking on your site. I think, as with GDPR, customers will become aware that this is the new normal.
Yep.
And in fact, if you're not complying with it, I mean, you will have, bounce transactions and that kind of thing, but also customers are going to come to expect this level of security.
Okay, so first thing is recognize that you might get a drop-off in conversion rate around September, just being it is worth being aware of that.
Yes.
I guess one of the things we could do is make sure that in September, October, we look at what we see across the industry on conversion rates and track whether that's going up or down. And then the other key part of that is who does the hotelier need to be speaking to make sure that they're going to be compliant?
So on your direct site, it'll be kind of a series of conversations about the booking engine particularly and the PMS. So the booking engine, obviously, you need to be talking about how you're facilitating payments and whether you have that 3D secure implemented and that kind of thing, your payment services provider. But your PMS is also, there's going to be additional infrastructure needed essentially to handle these different verification values being, put into it from different distribution channels.
Okay, because the card issuer, who kind of has the authorities breathing down its neck, the card issuer has to check that the merchant, the hotelier who took the credit card, did the right checks.
Yeah.
And for the card issuer to know that, it means the PMS needs to be pushing to the card issuer, don't worry, I took these 2 factors.
I believe so. I mean, the thing is, it's not 100% clear what parts of the kind of infrastructure it's all going to live in.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the issue is that we're finding is that we've heard from quite a few hoteliers and also speaking to booking engines is that it's a very short lead time now to that deadline, and actually it's not too clear.
Yeah, my understanding is that if the deadline is September, actually any of the if you are a payments or a merchant who's setting up a system that's going to take 2 factors, you have to have that system okayed in the next 15 days in order for it to be allowed to run from September.
Yeah.
So main message would be go speak to your booking engine.
Yes.
And to your payments merchant provider, because they should have a plan, and they should know what they're doing.
Yeah, and your bank potentially as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, I know that we have Sasha from Busy Rooms on stage next. I haven't pre-warned him, but this might be something to talk about from a booking engine point of view. Though that's not what that panel's about. So booking engine should be first. Now that's all well and good. So we understand that's hoteliers operating like any online retailer. Yeah. Which is kind of for whom this new legislation is designed. Has this legislation been designed or thought out for situations where a hotelier has a agent acting on its behalf?
I mean, it doesn't appear that this legislation, the majority of transactions, you're looking at a merchant to customer relationship. And obviously in the hotel industry, you have a lot of intermediaries handling both booking and payments. And the issue is, it's not just authentication needed at the payment, it's at the time of booking. Right. So if you think about a kind of book now, pay later, the card details are still taken to be passed to the hotel. The authentication needs to happen when those card details are taken. Yep. So that might introduce some friction, right? A customer might need to have a 0 charge taken off their card, potentially, and might wonder why that's happening. Yep. And then the kind of just from the data infrastructure perspective of them passing that value down through to the hotel. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so message 3 is there are unknown edge cases and risks, and that would be an OTA or a wholesaler or someone takes card payment details that would ordinarily then be charged at checkout by the hotel, but that it's not clear from the legislation whether it's the OTA that needs to do 2-factor when they're trying to reduce friction and get a booking on their website, or whether it's the hotel that needs to do 2-factor on property, or whether it still counts. It's potentially both. The OTA needs to do it up front if they're taking card details. Yeah. And the risk is that
you may decide to charge a guest. I think that isn't the worst edge case is what happens if someone's put in their credit card details, they then no-show, and you would ordinarily charge their credit card, but that's you charging their credit card without taking two-factor authentication.
Yeah, so this is one of the ones where one of those exemptions actually is merchant-initiated transactions, so that's direct debits is kind of the case that's designed for, so where the merchant has been given initial authorization to charge a card for an amount that's not maybe specified.
Yeah.
So that maybe need to be brought into T's and C's and things that the hotel can make one of those merchant-initiated transactions, but that needs to be tagged on the kind of the transaction as it goes to the issuer. So that's a kind of contracting and T's and C's change. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be the third thing takeaway here would be when you go speak to your booking engine, payment provider, whatever else. You also need to think about and understand what happens if I charge someone who was a no-show. Will their card issuer, 2 weeks later, say, I'm sorry, we're not going to let you take that fee from their credit card. Even though they made a booking, even though they're a no-show, if they didn't give you two factors, then, and you don't have them and the OTA didn't pass them to you, then you charged outside this legislation, so you can't do that, so we're not going to honour the payment.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing to think about with this, is that it's not just a kind of e-commerce headache, it's a kind of organisational, if you're getting bounce payments, and I think there was a panel at Hedner recently talking about this, and I would encourage everyone to go and watch the video of that. They were saying it might be 25 to 30% of payments that bounce initially as we get used to that, and chasing that and explaining to the customer why they thought they booked, but now we have to authenticate you again, and that kind of thing. Like, it's a customer experience thing as well.
Got it. And then someone may get the customer who decides, I'm going to sue the hotel who charged me outside this legislation because they shouldn't have. Okay, so there's why it's a concern. And yet it's something that we haven't heard talked about much, which is why we wanted to put it out here.